transfer news, and we are starting off with Savinho. So what has Fabrizio Romano said?
It's not good.
Oh, God. Here we go.
Tottenham are still pretty far apart on price for Savinho. Savinho has handed in a transfer request and has already agreed personal terms with Spurs. That's interesting. That's a bit new, how he's handed a transfer request.
Wow.
But we're still pretty far apart on price.
Wow. Transfer request.
So he is trying to force it.
Like a bit ago, like he asked to leave. Now he's handed in a transfer request. Jake Sanders from The Sun saying Savinho's piling pressure on Man City to let him leave in a £60 million deal.
Well, there you go. That's the evidence of that.
Yeah. So, wow. Transfer request. So, how much? What is the price difference here? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, how far apart can we be? Obviously, we heard at the beginning of the summer that City could well be willing to let him go for around 45 to 50. So maybe we were on the assumption that that could be the price that could get it over the line. But now we've seen, now as the market has moved since obviously those last few months, we've seen the prices of, go crazy for a lot of different players. Maybe City are looking at thinking, actually, Savinho is probably worth a bit more than we originally priced him at. And now if you want him, you're going to have to pay 60 to 65 maybe. And maybe we're still trying to haggle down to closer to the £50 million mark. And City are saying, trying to be a bit more stubborn. That's maybe what I'd assume. Do they want maybe even as high as 70? Obviously, last summer that was the price for him after one good season in the Premier League. But last season, you'd assume the season he had, his price would drop. And also the fact that he's handed a transfer request, that price would go a bit lower. And City are known for letting players go if they're unhappy and don't want to stay. Obviously for the right price, but they're known for not standing in these players' way if their heart is not a Man City. So that would suggest if he's handed a transfer request that they're not going to hang on to him, like they will let him leave. And maybe Spurs have seen that and trying to use that leverage to try and get the price down as much as possible. But what are we going to end up paying? That's the question.
The thing is, with him putting in a transfer request, with him desperate to join Tottenham Hotspur, we've seen on social media what he's like, and liking every Spurs player's tweet, following every Spurs player, putting his thumb up to a fan that said Savinho joined Tottenham. I mean, this deal surely gets done. When have you ever seen, apart from Savinho, Man City hold on to a player like this that really wants to go?
The only one I would say is they did. There was lots of rumours for many years about Bernardo, and he certainly seemed to hang on for two to 3 years. But then again, how desperate was he to leave? He wasn't exactly handing in transfer requests, was he? So I think more often than not, even very good players, we've seen the likes of João Cancelo, kick up a fuss and then he's out the door pretty quickly. Even the likes of Ferran Torres, who wasn't terrible and he was out the door pretty quickly. Leroy Sané, he was a good player for them. He was getting itchy feet, and all of a sudden he was out the door pretty quickly. Alvarez, another player who was a good player for them, and as soon as he wanted to leave, bam, he's out. So, yeah, by and large, it doesn't matter how good they are. If they want to leave, City do usually facilitate it.
Unless there's a different way of working now at Manchester City, because obviously Pep Guardiola's gone now. Tixi Bergstein as well, who was their sporting director, I think, among all those transfers that you spoke about. They've got a new guy at the helm now. I can't remember his name at the top of my head, but maybe there is a different way of working at Man City.
Rafi Mawson's come to Spurs.
Rafi Mawson's at Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, it might well be. Maybe they're more stubborn, and maybe they're just want their price. To be fair, all the other players that they've sold, I don't know how much they lowered their price. I mean, Alvarez was 70 to 75 million.
Yeah.
I think Ferran was a decent fee. I think 50 to 55 at the time. I can't remember how much Sané went for, but I think they still get decent fees for their players. So I don't know whether in those deals they ended up compromising on price, or whether they just got the money that they wanted. And maybe this is the case here. They're just looking for that price. If it's 65 million, if they're being stubborn on that, it is quite a high price to pay. But I think we've gone so far down the road, and I think everyone's gotten so used to the idea of Savinho being a Tottenham player. It'll just be a major disappointment if it didn't happen at this point.
Yeah, like I keep saying, I do think a deal's going to get done. Once he's starting handing in transfer requests, I think they're going to get. There's going to be some sort of compromise that has to be met between Tottenham Hotspur and Man City. Whether Tottenham have to go up a little bit, Man City have to come down a little bit, I don't know. But the player clearly doesn't want to be at Manchester City.
It is odd though, considering when you look at the Tonali and Fernandes deal, look, obviously we don't know what the price Man City are demanding. So if they're like demanding 100 million or something ridiculous, then I understand there's going to be a price gap. But I can't see that being the reality. If maybe they are demanding like close to 70 potentially, given what the market is at the moment. But when you look at the Fernandes and Tonali deals, they had no problem overpaying for those deals, did they? They had no problem putting the money down. So it's either a ridiculous fee or maybe they're just being a bit more stringent on this deal than they were on the previous deals, and maybe they see those other deals as absolute necessities, and maybe when they look at Savinho, think either we pay the price we want or we move on to someone else.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess at this point, but Spurs have got to get the deal over the line. I think they will. Savinho pushing for the deal, handed in a transfer request. So let's see what the next steps are.
And I love that. I love that he's really... Obviously, we've heard that he's desperate to come and he's pushing for it, but actually going that extra mile and putting the transfer request in, that really shows a willingness to try and do what needs to be done to get this deal over the line. And that also shows his excitement, desperation to come play for Tottenham. And that's great.
Is he going to take it the next step?
Which is what?
Alexander Isak.
Not turn up for training. Well, yeah. But do we want that? Do we like players who do that kind of thing? I mean, putting a transfer request is one thing, but all of a sudden when you're not turning up to training, that's all well and good when you sign him, but then all of a sudden you could be on the end of that if he wants to move on from you. So for part of me, it's like I don't kind of like players who do that. So, you've got to be a bit wary of it. But yeah,
I mean, I bet you would have taken Alexander Isak.
Absolutely. Yeah, some players you don't really care about if they're going to do that. Yeah, what's your gut telling you about the price they're demanding?
It's a hard one. It's a hard one to think of, but I got a feeling
it must be about 70.
Yeah, I think 75, 70, 75. I think Spurs want to go to like the £60 million mark. I think it's around there. But then there's not too much difference in that. So let's meet halfway between 60 million and 75. So go to what? 67.5 million, something like that. Let's get a deal done, and let's all move on, because this saga has drained the fan base. It's been going on since last summer. Let's just come to a conclusion one way or another, whether we sign him or don't. Let's just get this story out of our news feed, you know what I mean? Because it's just been going on for too long.
Yeah, but it's interesting how the narrative's changed, because all of a sudden we're saying, yeah, let's just pay the 60, but at the beginning of the summer it's like, well, everyone was saying 45 to 50 is a good deal. If we want any more than that, maybe we should go to a different target. But now they've upped their price. Now we're saying, yeah, if it's 60, just pay 60. Look, I don't mind. I think he's a really good player, as I've said, and he's a good long-term player for us potentially with his age, and I think he's only got scope to grow, and I think I think De Zerbi could really get the best out of him and make him a better player. We've already seen how he's improved players already in a very short space of time. So I don't mind paying the 60 million or whatever it's going to take to bring him in. But I think beginning of the summer, a lot of fans were saying, if it's 45, 50, good. If it's any more than that, move on.
Yeah, I was saying that. I was saying that, and I was saying that I want Savinho in alongside another player who can, really push the boat out in terms of getting goal contributions. I mean, we're getting to the nitty gritty part of the transfer window now. There's less than a month.
That's the worry, isn't it?
So it is a concern. So I think even in that sense, you're looking at the market. You're looking at who we can potentially bring out on the wings. We need 2 players. So get this one over the line. If you have to overpay a little bit, you have to overpay. But we need another one as well, which we'll get into in a minute.
It's also very concerning. The saga's been going for so long, and there's still a big far apart in the valuation. Like, surely at this point, we should know what each other want, and there should have already been a compromise. What is taking so long?
Look, Rafi Mawson has got very good contacts at Man City. Why has this not escalated quicker? It's very peculiar. But hopefully now that he has handed in a transfer request, things will start to happen. On Cody Gakpo, not such great news if you want to bring him to the club, as James Pearce from The Athletic says Liverpool have absolutely no interest in selling Cody Gakpo this summer. Andoni Iraola believes he'll get the best out of Gakpo this season. SZY also says, I really don't think they sell. I asked for an honest opinion and heard he'd stay there for one more season. Spurs could test them with a £70 million offer, but it's risky. Roberto De Zerbi said someone would come in before Savinho. Gakpo wouldn't really match that timeline. So, yeah, I mean, I was saying yesterday in terms of this position Liverpool are taking in the market that he's not for sale, that I think it's a negotiation tactic. Still could be, to be honest. But, I mean, The Athletic obviously are very well-sourced publications. So, I don't know. It makes me feel a bit negative about this deal.
Look, I've always said it's right now, Liverpool are very short in the forward line. They need players coming in. There's obviously links to Barcola and maybe others, but right now, Gakpo is still one of their main attackers, so I can't see them sanctioning any sort of deal until they're comfortable that they're set in the forward line without him, and I don't think they are right now. And they know he's been a reliable kind of squad player for them since he's been there, and he's a reliable source of goal contribution. So I can't see them letting him go unless, you know, I mean, I know they've signed Munoz, but I don't know. I don't know if they've signed him, you know, as a replacement for Gakpo. Like, do they really believe he's going to replace what Gakpo brings when it comes to output immediately? He's a young winger from Spain. Obviously, he might be good. I don't know, but do they trust him to replace Gakpo? Obviously, Rio is still only 18.
I think Barcola will be the replacement for Gakpo.
I understand, but that hasn't happened yet. I understand they're in for him, but I'm saying they're not going to sanction any move for Gakpo until these moves materialise. And that Barcola signing, that could be one that rumbles on for a while because they're talking about big money for that, and that's not an easy deal to do. So, yeah, I think right now I wouldn't expect much movement on it until we see movement from Liverpool's side, and that could take a while. So I mean, I want Gakpo, and I think he would really add quality to our attack, but I don't know if I would. I don't know. Look, he's good. He is good, and I do want him at Tottenham, and I do think there aren't many options on the market who are Prem proven, who are as a reliable source of goal contributions as he is, who we can get over the line. But if it's playing the waiting game, I'll try and source out other options if we can. Maybe dip into who else is on the list before we hang our hat and get Cody Gakpo, because that might not happen. But obviously, I would try and get him if we can. I would test the waters with a bid if and see if there's any movement there.
I think like 65, 70 million for Gakpo. I said yesterday 65, but like if it's an extra 5 million, then whatever, fair enough. But like anything above that, when you're looking at 75, 80, 85, 90, I mean, it's just astronomical.
I know, it's
for
crazy.
A player of Gakpo's quality. It really is. Like, we talk about consistent goal contributions, but a player that's getting up to the 80s and 90s, you'd expect him to have even more goal contributions than what Gakpo is bringing, wouldn't you? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's nuts, the money. Like, and look, I know what I said about the Fernandes and Tonali thing, but I think it is a different case. It's a different case with Gakpo. Like, but then again, you look on the other side of it. Who are you going to bring in that's going to bring in a guaranteed more goal contributions than Cody Gakpo? You know, you're looking at Marcus Rashford. He's not consistently done it for the last 2 or 3 years, however long it's been. So there's a risk there. Who else is it? Pedro Neto. He doesn't bring in consistent goal contributions.
I think if you're not getting Gakpo, you probably have to make do with the fact that you might have to sign someone from a cheaper price bracket, but potentially with more upside, but a bit more of a risk. And you have to be okay with that. And if you're one of these fans who is saying, we need Prem proven, we need guaranteed this, guaranteed that, no, we don't want to take any risk on any player, then you should be a fan that says, okay, let's just spend the money on Gakpo and push the boat out. But I think at the moment, for me, I'm obviously like Gakpo. I do want to bring him in. I'm not like absolutely obsessed with the idea of getting him, but I do want him. I do think he's a reliable player, and I think he adds quality to the attack. But if we don't get him because we're either priced out or Liverpool don't want to sell, and we go for someone else who's maybe a bit more of a risk, but also potentially could be better than him, I'm okay with that as well.
Another name that has been put into the hat, well, been put in all summer, to be honest, we've spoken about him a couple of times, is João Bahoya. Seb Stafford-Bloor of The Athletic saying that Tottenham expressed an interest in Frankfurt's João Bahoya and spoke to the French winger's representatives before the window began. The player has never been seen as a primary target, though, and there has been no club-to-club contacts at this point. I mean, I thought he played very well against Spurs when we played them in the Europa League. But apart from that, I haven't really seen him much, so it's hard for me to comment.
Yeah, he's one of these players who like performs quite well on the data when it comes to his underlying metrics, but he's still like, still waiting for him to explode kind of thing. So that's the kind of signing I'm talking about when I'm saying if you're not going to go for Gakpo, you might have to make a signing like this and hope that he turns out as good as the data suggests or the scout recruitment suggests. So, and you might have to be okay with that. And he might be good, but then there'll be some fans saying, "Oh, we're skimping, we're not pushing the bar, we're not being ambitious, all this kind of stuff." But if you believe in your own scouting and recruitment, and this is what you've decided on, I don't mind. Go for it, and let's see if he can come up with anything. But that's kind of the pool you're probably looking at if players like Gakpo don't materialise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these goal contributions that he's had over the last 2 years. It doesn't scream out to me like a goal contribution machine.
No, but he's 21, and obviously, if you're a scout, you're not necessarily scouting a player at what he's done previously and expect him to repeat it. You're looking at him thinking, this is what he can do. This is what he's very good at. This is his strength. If you get him in the right system, if you can improve him in these certain aspects, this guy can get you the goal contributions. He's just very young right now, and he needs to improve. But you could get the best out of him. Obviously, our scouting hasn't exactly done the job over the last however many years. So there's a lot of skepticism when it comes to signing a player like him, who's young, who still needs to prove, and he's not proven.
Another Odebear, basically.
Yeah, but Tel and Odebear haven't hit the ground running, unfortunately, and have taken time to obviously get to the level we want them to be. But this doesn't mean that every signing we make is always going to take that amount of time. It depends how good your scouting is.
Yeah, but there's no suggestion that you would come in and hit the ground running and bring us what we need straight away.
That's what the scouting is there for.
I understand that, but obviously we know what the scouting likes at Spurs.
That's what I'm saying. That's why there's a lot of skepticism around our recruitment because of previous years. But I think right now we're at a stage we all want proven players who have done it in the Premier League, so we can rely on them to give those goal contributions. And in that case, you go with Gakpo
as well. We're so desperate.
Yeah, and in that case, you should push the bar for Gakpo. But if we're not going to do that, if he's ungettable, you might have to settle for a player like this and just hope.
There must be other people. There must be other players that we can look at that are more proven than Bahoya, maybe at a different league, that are getting goal contributions regularly. There must be.
I'm not okay. You can get more proven
just
players.
The Bahoya pool.
I'm not saying it's just Bahoya, but I'm saying it's someone. Yeah, someone who's. But my point is, it's going to be someone less proven than someone like Gakpo.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on, and let's talk about Nicolas Jackson, because with Jackson, Kieran Gill of Daily Mail says that Tottenham are interested in Jackson. Chelsea value him at 65 million. Jack Rossler of The Sun saying that Tottenham are understood to have expressed an interest to Chelsea in signing Nicolas Jackson. De Zerbi is very keen to add up 3 more forwards. The Athletic say that Jackson is valued at £65 million and is liked by Aston Villa. No mention of Tottenham. However, before we even start talking about it, Alistair Gold has already given us the here we cold. He's saying that Tottenham have no interest in signing Nicolas Jackson this summer. So
everyone was in a frenzy for about an hour.
I like Jackson.
Yeah, me too.
I do like Jackson. I mean, I know he's clowned upon a lot because his finishing's not the greatest, but I think he's strong, he's athletic, he gets in behind well, his hold-up play is really good. I think he gives you a lot. His positioning is really good. He gets so many chances. But obviously the negatives are his finishing and maybe his aerial ability is not great as well for someone so big and athletic. You'd expect him to be better in the air. But I think Spurs should be looking at someone like Nicolas Jackson. I think he's an upgrade on what we got.
Yeah, I think, as I've said with Jackson, I think in a perfect world, you probably want him as your second striker to a much better first choice number 9. And I think he obviously adds chaos. He adds unpredictability. As you say, he's got incredible physical attributes and he's always a handful. Every time I watch him play, the opposition centre-backs seem to struggle against him. They seem to always have their work cut out for him. The problem is the guy has zero composure. I know he has scored goals previously. Maybe it's because he just gets a lot of chances, but you don't trust him when he's one-on-one, do you? And you don't believe he's like guaranteed to bury that chance. He lacks that extra bit of calmness in front of goal, and he ends up missing lots of really presentable chances. But the reality is, his 2 seasons in the Premier League, he got 14 goals and then 10 goals. So it's not like he doesn't score at all, and it's not like he is a guy who really struggles to score, but he has that little bit missing that stops him being that really elite striker, or really a very good striker. So I would definitely like him. I would sell one of our strikers and bring him in. I think in a perfect world, you sell both strikers, one of them be Jack, and then bring in one Jackson, and maybe hopefully someone better than him or someone more reliable in front of goal than Jackson. So I think that would be like how I see the forward line in a perfect world. I think in the meantime, if this mythical number 9 who is better than Jackson and is going to get 30 goals isn't really attainable or realistic right now, I would still get Jackson in and move on one of the forwards that we have right now, and I still think that's an improvement. But then again, as we've been talking about, 65 million. I mean, this is the market we're talking about. Everyone's saying 70 for Gakpo is ridiculous, and yet the price for someone like Jackson, who was on loan at Bayern last season and wasn't really getting that much of a look in, and it was being out of favour at Chelsea before the year before that guy is 65 million pounds. That is the market for forward players right now. So when you put into that context, I mean, 70 million for Gakpo doesn't really sound outrageous when you compare it to that.
I think 70 million for Gakpo is not crazy. I think it's when you get above that, 75, 80 plus, that's when you get into the ridiculous territory with Cody Gakpo. And I think it's the same with Nicolas Jackson. Like, if you sign him between like 50 and 60, I think that's a fair deal to do. And then when you get to like above 65 million, that's when it starts to become a bit pricey, and you think, what are you actually doing here? So yeah, with 65, I think that's probably the top limit that anyone should pay for Nicolas Jackson. I think as well, when you're talking about his finishing and his composure, that's some stuff that's like coachable. You know what I mean? It's not a fundamental flaw that you can't get better at. So I think De Zerbi would like to work with him, and I think he would get a lot better under De Zerbi. So I think it is someone that Spurs should be seriously looking at, because if you bring him in and let's say you pay 65 million for, and then he gets better under De Zerbi in those aspects that he's not very good at this moment in time, then suddenly, it's worth the money.
100%. As I say, I would definitely be looking at him compared to our other strikers. I'd much rather give Jackson a go than continue with both Solanke and Richarlison going into the new season. I definitely think he adds, at the bare minimum, he just adds a bit of unpredictability and a bit of chaos in that front line, and that would maybe... also, I think his link play is actually really good as well, and I actually think De Zerbi would like that. But they're saying, now Ali Gold is saying, we're not expected to make any moves. So are we not interested at all? Is De Zerbi not that bothered? Do we think the price is too high? Do we just think there's better options out there than Jackson? I don't know why we wouldn't look at him right now, but Ali Gold has poured cold water on it, which is a shame. Look, it's not like Ali Gold has never been wrong, and he has, but I don't think he would say that unless he's heard some sort of information after all these reports. So you've got to take his word for it at the moment. I would definitely believe him rather than the other two journalists you mentioned.
I think if you want to compare his first 2 seasons for Chelsea, obviously 1 year was under Pochettino and 1 year was Maresca. Was it Maresca his second year?
Yeah,
it must have been. So, I mean, he was considerably better under Pochettino than he was under Maresca. And would you say our style of play might look more similar to what Maresca does than what Pochettino does? Like, it was very much transitional based at times under Pochettino, and that's where, he probably comes alive. And also, the 14 goals that he scored under Pochettino, 3 of them were against a 9-man Tottenham.
True.
That people dubbed it as the worst hat-trick they've ever seen.
It was one of the worst hat-tricks I've ever seen.
So you got to caveat that as well. So
no, but the reality is, he's whether you got to caveat with the hat-trick, but that's still 11 goals. Before that, 10 goals the next season, and you do look at his underlying metrics.
Yeah, they're all very good.
They're all very strong. He's a very good carrier. I think the main thing is his XG like per 90, so the amount of chances he's getting for himself is always extremely high. So he always is making a very good movement. He's always getting in the right positions. He's always a threat constantly. So he never gives defenders a moment's rest. And I think that does have a value. But obviously, if he's not going to be a reliable source of goals, people would argue, however valuable it is not. It doesn't make a difference if he's continually fluffing his lines. And obviously, his finishing is definitely a major issue, and it's something that he just hasn't really been able to shake off. But I do like him. I think there is potential there. He's not the finished article, and at 25, maybe you expect him to be, more finished than he should than he is at the moment. But I think there is a player worth pursuing, and it's disappointing to hear that we're not going to pursue him, because I don't know what other players that in the forward line as a pure number 9 we would go for. Who would be a better fit than him?
Why don't we just go for Guirassy, man? I don't understand why we don't just go for him.
Yeah, he's a reliable source of goals. He's strong, good finisher. He's a much better finisher.
In terms of number 9s that are gettable right now, surely in terms of proven quality finishing goals, guaranteed goals for next season, he is the number 1.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just an age thing, but obviously he's only 30. He's a good short-term option.
I think him for 2 years. And then, you've got the prospect of, if we do get Champions League, potentially bring back Harry Kane next summer or in 2 years' time, wherever it may be. I think he'll be a great stopgap.
Yeah, he's done it. Obviously, the caveat would be he's only done it in Bundesliga, but he also does score a lot in the Champions League, so that would obviously offset that caveat. But then again, off the back of that, we've seen last season, even the Champions League group stages aren't exactly the same level of the Premier League at the moment. So that's obviously another thing to think about. But yeah, I would definitely take a punt on him, because right now the striker market is very scarce. He's a guy who can score goals at a very high level. And if it is a short-term option or a stopgap option while we assess our options going forward, I'm willing to give it a go.
Another striker Spurs have been linked to today goes by the name of... Where is it? Florian Balogun, Flo Balogun.
Again.
Monaco. Spurs have been linked by the Daily Mail, saying that Tottenham have been offered the chance to sign Florian Balogun. The striker's representatives are said to have reached out to Spurs directly with a proposal for the former Arsenal youngster. He is available at a very competitive price, apparently.
It's very similar to what I feel about Jackson. I think maybe he might be a slightly better finisher than Jackson, actually, but I still think it's a very similar, very good physical profile, runs defenders ragged, but he's not like a killer in front of goal. But I think he's probably a little bit of a better finisher than Jackson. I think he's got a bit more better finishing technique. I think he strikes the ball a bit cleaner than Jackson does when I watch him play. Obviously, was quite a good threat at the World Cup. Obviously there was controversy around his red card and everything like that, but I thought he was quite good at the World Cup. And I think over the last few seasons in France, he's shown he's a pretty decent striker. But whether I would obviously rather go with Jackson, because we know he can do it in the Prem, whereas with Balogun, he's only really done it in France. So I think Jackson's probably less of a risk than Balogun for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, with Balogun, look, he's done very well for Monaco. And who was he at with before Monaco? I think
Rennes. Was it Rennes? No, not Rennes. It was with Will Still.
Yeah, I can't remember the club, but I think he did very well there in terms of the number of goals he was getting. But I do question him in the Premier League, because we've just never seen it. So I agree. I would go
Reims.
Reims, that was it. Yeah, I would go more for Jackson than I would go for Flo Balogun. And obviously, like, if this guy goes through a bit of a barren run early doors, you know what's going to happen with the fan base. Oh,
Double
get
agent.
Get this Gooner out. So yeah, I'd much prefer go for Nicolas Jackson than Flo Balogun. Next player, so we're going to talk about a few outgoings or potential outgoings, and Lucas Bergvall, who is on the next on the list. And Graham Bailey says that Tottenham have called talks over a potential departure for Lucas Bergvall after De Zerbi made it clear he wants the teenager, well, he's not a teenager anymore, to remain in North London. So maybe Lucas Bergvall might be staying at the club after all that.
I said after that picture with Bergvall smiling with De Zerbi with his arm around his shoulders, like, that doesn't look like a guy who's desperate to leave. One whisper from De Zerbi in his ear and he's fully back on board. Look, obviously this is a report from Team Talk, and we know they do pump out a lot of stuff. So I think they've actually... I have to give him credit. I think they've probably been a bit more reliable recently since like Graham Bailey's come on than they have been maybe in previous years. It's not maybe the dumpster fire it was, but it's still not a reliable source of information.
No Ekrem Konar.
No, it's it's better than Ekrem Konar, but it's not exactly Ornstein or Romano, put it that way. But
not many are.
Yeah, exactly. That's also true. But if it is true, I'm delighted with that. It has gone very quiet when it comes to Bergvall. The last we heard is a few weeks ago, a bid rejected of 46 million. And I always thought, if that's getting rejected, are we really going to see bids much higher than that? I'd be very, very surprised if the likes of Newcastle, Forest, or I think Villa as well were linked, are actually going to put a bid of close to 60 million, which Spurs were looking for. You would think as well, if the price is genuinely 50 million and we had a bid rejected 46, then surely that deal gets done, but it hasn't been done, and he's gone on the tour and he's played quite a bit and looked good on the tour as well. So maybe there is a reason it has gone quiet. Maybe Graham Bailey, his information is accurate. I would absolutely love for him to stay. We've all been very clear that I think we all think Bergvall's a top talent, and I think he's got a future here if he does stay. But I also understand it from his point of view. If he looks at the signings we're making and looks at it thinking, look, I'm getting out of here. I don't think it's the best place for my development. But maybe he's looked at what De Zerbi's been doing with him pre-season, and you've seen him maybe improve a bit over these last couple of appearances. Obviously, it's only pre-season; you can't judge it too much, but maybe he's seen that, how De Zerbi can improve him, and maybe he's gotten assurances from De Zerbi, look, you will get game time if you stay. Maybe he's changed his mind. I'd like to think that's the case, but look, it's still a long way to go between now and the end of the window.
Look, obviously I've said I want Bergvall to stay, right? But what do we do then? Because if we wanted to bring in another midfielder, we spoke about yesterday, bringing in that midfielder makes it a 10 out of 10 window. To bring in someone that can play, like let's say a Morgan Gibbs-White, you know what I mean? Like, if that's going to be a hurdle for us getting Morgan Gibbs-White through the door, then it's probably a deal that we should look to do. Because Morgan Gibbs-White is obviously a ready-made player now, a player that can fill in the 10 when we've got so many problems there. And then obviously he can drop back, he can play many different positions in the midfield. So in an ideal world, yes, I do want to keep Lucas Bergvall at the club. But if it's going to be a hurdle to us bringing in someone like Morgan Gibbs-White or an Alex Scott, would you prefer to sell?
I would, but if that's the case, you should have accepted 46 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You shouldn't be holding out for 60 if that's your plan. And if you're certain about getting the likes of Scott or Gibbs-White, then you should sell 100%, and you should probably compromise on the price. But the fact they rejected 46 million and they haven't come back to the table suggests that maybe we are being quite stubborn on a quite a high price, and that doesn't tell me that we are willing to sell him and go and get Gibbs-White or Scott. That doesn't tell me that's the plan. I don't think it is the plan. I'm not saying we wouldn't want to bring those players in, but I think right now we're pretty happy with the midfield.
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Negotiations can be a long drawn-out process like we've seen with Savinho. But you never know, because Forest haven't brought in anyone. Newcastle, I don't think they've brought in anyone. To caveat, Sandro Tonali and potentially Bruno Guimaraes leaving as well. So there's still opportunities there because these clubs haven't made the purchases yet.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows what can happen over the next few weeks. Something tells me that we haven't heard the last of this. And I think that one of Forest or Newcastle might still come back in with a higher bid. But we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it and see what happens.
Yeah, I think the question is from those guys is, are they coming for him because they see him as this guy who can definitely start and they're desperate to get someone of Bergvall's quality in, and they see him as the answer to their midfield problems, or are they coming in for him because they see him wanting to leave and they think they can maybe get a good deal for quite a good young player?
Could be a bit of both.
But what's more of their motivation? Because if the motivation is they see him as their starter, then maybe they're going to be more willing to go to the price we want. But if they're just seeing him as a player who's available, who's a good young player who can maybe be part of the squad, maybe they're not going to be willing as much.
Yeah, I think if they're only going to bring him in as part of the squad, he may as well just stay at Tottenham, because that's what he's going to be at Tottenham.
Yeah, but maybe he just sees more chances at those places than he does at Tottenham because of the signings we've made.
Potentially, but big midfielders have left both those clubs this summer. Mm-hmm. So there's obviously going to be more of a chance of him being more of a solidified starter at both those clubs. So the original talks, I can't remember who said it, but the original talk says they see Lucas Bergvall as Elliot Anderson's replacement, which is crazy.
But also, if you're Bergvall as well, you're looking at both those clubs right now. Newcastle a bit of turmoil, and you've got Forest who've got Glasner. Obviously, Glasner's a good coach, but maybe he's looking at De Zerbi. He's thinking, is maybe De Zerbi the best guy out of those three to improve me as a player rather than those clubs? He might be looking at it that way.
Yeah, he could be looking at it that way. I mean, look, we don't know about the Newcastle manager. I think if I was Bergvall, I'd stay away from Newcastle right now. But if I'm looking at that Nottingham Forest project under Glasner, and he's got assurances of starts and playing time, I would be seriously looking at that, because he is going to get more chances there than he's going to get at Tottenham. That's the reality.
He is, but Glasner's a good not saying he's a bad manager at any stretch. He's just not as attacking as De Zerbi, and maybe De Zerbi could develop him in a better way. But maybe look, obviously he did well with Wharton, so can't exactly say he can't get the best out of centre mids.
Next up, we're going to talk about Cristian Romero, as there's been some information first up from Sasha Tavoleri saying that Inter are unwilling to meet Tottenham's €50 million asking price for Romero. It remains difficult to find common ground in negotiations, with Spurs standing firm. Romero, who is keen on joining Inter, will have to play a decisive role in getting the deal over the line. Sky Sports Italy are saying that Inter Milan require sales before they can try and sign Romero. Romero figures highly on Inter's list of targets for the summer window and face an uncertain future at Tottenham Hotspur. As things stand, the total package for Romero, including wage demands, are difficult for Inter Milan to get to. So, I mean, we heard yesterday that Spurs are asking for 40, not 50.
I mean, didn't Romano say, was it Romano or someone said that the fee's been agreed?
Yeah, we have heard the fee's been agreed.
Wasn't it Romano?
I don't think it was Romano. I think it was someone else, but it might have been.
Or maybe it was Damasio or something.
Yeah, I think it was Damasio. Who is Sky Sports Italy. I mean, he works for Sky Sports Italy, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Damasio?
but he was saying fee agreed. The only problem is Romero and his wages.
Yeah, so.
But now we're hearing...
Every day there's something else that is coming out on this Romero situation.
Yeah, it was. Some people in the comments says it was Romano.
It was Romano? So I don't know what to believe anymore. Maybe we just take Romano because Romano is the most reliable out of all of them.
But as we've been saying all summer, agreeing 40 million does seem ridiculous as well. I mean, I'm a bit annoyed by if they were now far apart and wait on a gap in valuation, just because I'm sick of talking about this transfer and I just want it to be over and done with at this point. And if we were going to take a cut price free a fee, which is a fee that we weren't going to be happy with, then just take it and move on, because all this talk is nonsense. But if we're being serious, we shouldn't be accepting 40 million. Of course, we should be demanding the bare minimum 50, and probably even more than that if we're looking at the quality of the player, the length of the contract, and all that kind of stuff, and his standing in the game, with him getting to another World Cup final, having previously been a World Cup winner. So I think 40 million, we shouldn't be accepting that, and we should be holding out for more. And there should hopefully be other clubs interested, but given the fact that we heard that there was a fee agreed with Inter, that would imply that the interest is really low and we're just desperate to get rid, and we're desperate to get as much money as we can for him. So I thought that was the case, but now we're hearing that the fee is back at 50, which makes more sense to us. But also, what's changed? Has anything changed? Maybe Romano jumped the gun when he talked about an agreed fee, and we have seen him jumping the gun this summer a few times when it comes to a fee agreed, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. What I would do if I was Spurs right now, I'll go to Inter Milan negotiation. We'll give you Romero, we'll give you 50 or 60 million on top, and we'll take Lautaro Martinez off your hands. That's what I would do.
What about Marcus Thuram?
Or him I'll take as well. But Lautaro Martinez. Let's revive that deal.
That would be great. I would love to get Lautaro in. He's one of these strikers who is maybe at a club where financially you could show your muscle against. He's been at Inter for a long time. Could he be looking for a new challenge? Albeit, I do remember when we first linked with him, he was saying he was absolutely loving life in Inter. I think he just opened a new restaurant or something, and he's really settled there. But that was obviously a few years ago now. Could he be wanting a new challenge? But then again, Inter, they challenge for the league every year. They always do fairly well in the Champions League as well. He's probably on a good wage. He might not be desperate to leave, so it's hard to say.
Yeah,
but I'd love him.
I feel like Lautaro Martinez, in terms of stylistic wise, could be perfect. proper bulldozer, isn't he?
He's good, and he's good link play. I don't think he's the best finisher in the world, but I think he's a good finisher. Gets goals. I think he's the kind of a full package. I really like him, and he's been at the top level for a long time. I think there's a very little downside. The only thing I would say about Lautaro is it's only really like my own perception, but whenever I watch him in big Champions League games and also in the World Cup, he seems to really fluff his lines like badly. I don't know if he's a big game player. Like there's something, whenever I watch him in big games, he always has a really bad performance all the time.
Great at the World Cup.
Wasn't great again at the World Cup, and that's multiple World Cups he's not been good at. And I feel like whenever Inter get to the latter stage of the Champions League, it's never really him that steps up. It's always other players. He always seems to have bad performances.
Yeah, that is a fair point. But let us know what you think of the Romero situation in the comment section below. The last one we're going to speak about is Manor Solomon. And the iPaper, Cat Lucas, says that Tottenham value Manor Solomon at £20 million. Hull are also interested, with West Ham leading the race. Opening bids of between 10 to 20 million are expected, and a move could gain momentum quickly and could be agreed over the coming days. Steb Stafford-Bloor of The Athletic saying that Tottenham and West Ham are in negotiations for a permanent transfer of Manor Solomon. I mean, I've always said like I'd be very surprised if Spurs get a fee that high for Manor Solomon. But then you think about it, with Spurs going into negotiations with West Ham, we know West Ham, we've given them 85 million for Mateus Fernandes. They've just got a very big fee for Somerville as well. So we know they've got money to play with.
And Hull are a Premier League team.
And Hull are a Premier League team. So maybe it is the right position for Spurs to go in that kind of high.
I think it should be. I think he is that kind of level of player when it comes to his value. Obviously, 15 to 20 million, it sounds like a lot of money, but really in 2026, that's like the modern day £5 million signing.
True.
So it's like for a Premier League club like Hull, it's not a massive outlay. I think if we do get 15 million, great. I think that's like a good fee for a player that's probably not going to be used too much this season. If we get 20 million, even better. I think if you're Solomon, do you maybe go down to West Ham, stay in London, obviously bigger club, and maybe down the line, you know, they could be in the Premier League maybe longer than Hull, or do you go to Hull, who's Premier League right now, but could well struggle to stay up and be in a relegation? I think West Ham's probably the better move. Yeah, I agree. Because I think if he stays at West Ham and does really well, and then they trust him going into next season, they're probably going to be in the Premier League longer than Hull.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a deal will get done to West Ham. Look, I spoke about it yesterday, saying a little bit of a shame because I would like to see keep him around for cover, just in case we get those injuries. But you can't keep a player against their will because of those situations. He obviously wants to leave Spurs. He's got interest there, and if we can get a decent fee of around 15 to 20 million, then I think it's a great deal for the club.
Yeah, it's no brainer, isn't it? At that price. So I think makes sense for everyone. I think it would be good for us to get even more money for another fringe player that we're not going to use. So I think it's the right thing.
Yeah. So that is your Tottenham update. A nice lengthy one for you guys. Let us know in the comment section below your thoughts regarding all the news stories that we have brought you today.